Hey everyone, and welcome to your deep dive. Buckle up, because we're about to explore a force that's completely shaking up the way movies, music, news, and pretty much all media are made. We're talking AI, artificial intelligence.
It really is changing everything.
Yeah, I mean, is this going to lead to like an explosion of awesome new content, or is this the beginning of the end for human artists and the people who work behind the scenes? It's a big question, and luckily you guys sent in a ton of great research so we can really get into it.
We do have a lot to cover. You've all sent some really compelling stuff looking at how powerful AI is becoming in media. We've got reports on the ethical issues, real-world examples of how companies are already using it, and even some ideas about where we go from here.
It's pretty mind-blowing.
Absolutely. So in this deep dive, we're going to break it all down for you. We're going to cut through the hype, figure out what's real, and help you understand just how much things are changing in terms of how media is created and how we all experience it. We'll also be digging into those big anxieties people have about jobs disappearing, what all this means for creativity, and what smart organizations are doing to adapt to this new era of AI.
So let's jump right in. I think the biggest concern on everyone's mind, and it's definitely come up a lot in what you've all said, is jobs, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the fact that AI can now write, create images, make music, and even produce videos all incredibly quickly and at a scale we've never seen before has people in the media world understandably nervous. And it's not just about AI doing things faster, it's about the possibility of whole professions and career paths changing drastically or even disappearing.
Yeah, and that anxiety is real. One of the most prominent examples that your sources highlight is the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike. Remember that. Pay and working conditions were at the heart of it, but there was also this huge concern about studios potentially replacing human writers with AI to create scripts and stories. It really brought the whole issue of AI's impact to the forefront.
It definitely did. And it's not just a hypothetical anymore either. The research you sent in actually shows that major film studios are already using AI for things like coming up with first drafts of screenplays, getting out storyboards, and even doing some initial work on visual effects. I mean, you read about this in the New York Times just earlier this year. And those are the kinds of jobs that have always been how new creatives got their foot in the door in Hollywood.
Exactly. It was how they got experience, built up their portfolio, learned the ropes.
Yeah.
And it's not just happening in Hollywood. If we look at news, for example, Reuters has reported on regional news outlets that are using AI to automatically generate local news updates, weather reports, and sports summaries.
Which makes sense. It can be a lot more efficient for them.
It is, but again, it raises questions about how young journalists will get that essential experience covering those sorts of stories.
Okay, so this isn't just a feeling. The data really backs up how big this shift could be. I mean, the IMF has projected that by next year, something like 85 million jobs globally could be disrupted by AI, and a lot of those are going to be in media.
Right, and when you look at how people are feeling about this, the research is pretty stark. You sent in a report from CompTIA from 2023, and they found that 75% of U.S. workers are worried about AI leading to job losses. And that fear is especially strong in creative fields, which shows you that people are really concerned about AI devaluing the skills that make us human.
And the numbers get even more specific for the media industry. A study from the World Economic Forum just this year estimated that within 5 years, almost 40% of the tasks that media professionals currently do could be automated or at least significantly changed by AI. That's not just a minor adjustment. That's a complete overhaul of how we think about roles and the skills needed to do them.
Yeah, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics is actually projecting a pretty big drop, somewhere between 17 and 22% in those traditional media production roles over the next decade. But at the same time, they're predicting a huge increase, around 35%, growth in jobs that are all about working with AI.
So that really shows that while some old jobs may go away, there are going to be a lot of new opportunities out there.
Absolutely.
But it's not all about the numbers, is it? Because the research you guys sent in also brings up some really deep questions about what this all means for human creativity, especially in a world where AI is getting so good at mimicking human-made content. I mean, it really forces media companies to figure out where human judgment, experience, and that spark of original thought is still absolutely necessary. And it's not just changing jobs, it's changing how we think about creative work as a whole.
It is. And we also have to think about those who are outside of the big companies. I mean, your research highlights how freelancers Independent producers and smaller media companies might find it a lot harder to keep up with all these AI-driven changes. And that could end up concentrating even more power in the hands of the bigger players, which isn't great for diversity or keeping the creative world vibrant.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but there's some good news here too. The research suggests that AI in media doesn't have to mean the end of human jobs. It's more about figuring out how humans and AI can work together, how they can augment each other.
Absolutely. And a big part of making that happen is reskilling. We need to give people the skills they need, not just to survive in this changing landscape, but to actually thrive in it.
Exactly. So it's about helping people move into those new AI-related roles we mentioned before, things like prompt engineering, which is becoming a super important skill.
It really is. And it's also about content curation, making sure the stuff AI generates is actually good and accurate. And then there's creative direction for AI, even roles focused on the ethics of all this. The best programs out there, according to the research, are the ones that combine technical AI training with practical applications in specific creative areas. That way, people can actually evolve their skill set instead of becoming obsolete.
And it's not just about theory. The sources you've all provided actually lay out a lot of practical steps for companies to take. Things like assessing what skills their workforce needs, creating training programs that teach both the technical and creative sides of working with AI, setting up mentoring programs where people with tech expertise can help those who are more on the creative side, and probably most importantly, giving people the time to actually learn all this stuff.
Absolutely. And we have some great real-world examples of this happening. One of the sources mentions a big broadcasting company that created what they call an AI skills hub. They've already trained 300 journalists in using AI to improve their reporting. And it wasn't just about the tech. They showed journalists how to use AI for investigations, for translating languages so they can reach a wider audience, for analyzing data more efficiently. But the whole time, they emphasized how important it is to maintain those core journalistic values.
That's awesome. And retraining is really important. But it sounds like companies also need to start creating entirely new jobs, jobs specifically designed to use those uniquely human skills while working alongside AI. Things like ethical decision-making, cultural sensitivity, and that big picture creative vision. And they need to make sure these new roles have clear career paths and good pay.
Exactly right.
So how do they actually do that?
Well, the research suggests that they need to start by looking at their current production processes and figuring out exactly where human input is most valuable. Then they can create job descriptions for these new roles that combine managing AI with creative work. They also need to figure out what skills and qualifications are needed for these new positions and make sure people get paid fairly for what they bring to the table. And making it clear that there are opportunities to move up in these new roles is going to be crucial.
And we have real companies doing this already. NBC Universal set up a whole new department last year called AI Ethics and Innovation.
I read about that, yeah.
They created roles like AI compliance specialists, creative AI directors, and AI training coordinators. And the key is they didn't just create titles, they created actual career paths for these new hybrid roles, which shows that they're really serious about it.
That's great to see. Another thing that your research emphasizes is the need for collaborative workflows, meaning deliberately setting things up so that humans and machines work together seamlessly.
Okay, so AI can handle those more routine tasks, like processing data, writing first drafts, or creating basic visuals, while humans do what they do best, provide that expert oversight, refine what AI produces, give it context, and steer the overall creative direction.
Exactly. But to make it work, everyone needs to know who's responsible for what and who gets to make decisions.
So you're talking about mapping out every step of the production process, deciding who does what, whether it's a human or an AI, setting up ways to make sure everything meets quality standards, having clear approval systems for anything AI creates, figuring out how to give AI feedback so it can learn and get better, and of course, monitoring everything to make sure it's all being done ethically.
That's a great summary. And one of your sources, the BBC, actually started a creative AI partnership this year, which is a perfect example of this in action. They teamed up AI specialists with seasoned creative professionals, and that led to some really cool new documentary formats. The AI did a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of research and sorting through information, but the human creatives shaped the story, decided how to make it emotionally impactful, and made sure it connected with audiences in a way that only humans can.
That's really cool.
It is.
Okay, so the last big takeaway from the research is the importance of change management. If companies want to bring AI into the media world, especially a world that's all about creativity, they need to be open and honest with their employees. People need to understand what's happening, how their jobs might be affected, and what they can do to learn new skills and move into these new roles.
Exactly. And they need more than just words. They need real support to make that transition.
So that means things like explaining the company's AI strategy clearly and telling people what the timeline is, providing resources that explain what AI can and can't do, having open forums where employees can ask questions and share their concerns, offering individual career counseling for those whose jobs might be changing, and most importantly, making sure company leaders are actually engaging with these technologies and showing that they still value human creativity and their employees.
All really important steps, and there's a good example of this in action with the Associated Press. They came up with a really clever system for approving content that involves AI. They let AI handle data-heavy reports, things like financial summaries, sports stats, weather reports. But for anything that requires judgment or could be ethically tricky, a human has to give it the okay. It's a smart way to make things more efficient without sacrificing journalistic integrity.
Really smart.
And when you look at the data on how these proactive strategies are working, it's pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
Well, remember that broadcasting company we talked about with the AI Skills Hub? They didn't just train people, they also saw a 40% drop in how anxious employees were about losing their jobs. That's based on internal surveys they did.
Wow, that's huge.
It really is. It shows that investing in your employees and their future can have a really powerful effect.
And it's not just good for morale, it's good for business. Media companies with these reskilling programs are seeing much higher employee retention rates, something like 65% higher, compared to companies that just bring in AI without supporting their people. That tells you a lot about how much employees value opportunities to grow and adapt.
It does. And companies that have created those new AI-related roles we talked about are also seeing a lot of benefits. One study found a 28% increase in employee satisfaction, and they're also getting AI workflows up and running much faster, about 45% quicker. That's because when roles are clearly defined, things just go more smoothly.
That makes sense. What about those collaborative workflows where humans and AI work together? Are those showing any results?
They are. The Reuters Institute did a study and found that newsrooms using these systems saw an average 32% increase in how much content they produced. And they didn't sacrifice quality either. Accuracy stayed the same or even improved because humans were still involved in checking things over.
That's really impressive.
It is. And the data on communication and change management is pretty amazing, too. Companies that were open with their employees and gave them opportunities to learn new skills saw 57% less resistance to AI being adopted, and 43% more people willingly participated in those reskilling programs. That shows just how important it is to support your workforce when you're going through a big technological change like this.
So for all of you listening, here's the takeaway from this deep dive. AI is definitely transforming the media landscape, but it doesn't have to mean the end of human creativity or mass unemployment. What your research really shows is that the key is to be proactive, to invest in people and their incredible potential, and to find ways for human ingenuity and AI to work hand in hand.
And that brings us to a final thought-provoking question. Given everything we've learned today about how fast AI is developing, how do you think our very definition of creativity might change in the years to come as humans and AI become more and more collaborative in the media world? What completely new ways of telling stories or making art might come out of this partnership that we can't even imagine yet? Think about that. And thank you for joining us on this deep dive.